Happy Friday! Welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and this is another round of Balancing the Books. If you haven't been here before, Balancing the Books is a game I play every single month where I add up all the books that came onto my TBR and all of the books that went off my TBR, and I try and make those numbers balance. And you know what? Recently I have been doing so well. Not to brag, but I'm smashing it. Maybe these extreme bags under my eyes are from all the nights I've spent staying up late reading. Worth it. So this video is very kindly sponsored by Blinkist, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Blinkist later on in the video because a lot of the books that I've read this month have been from Blinkist. But I'm going to go through basically in order. At the beginning of August, I had 33 books on my TBR. I'm sitting here next to my TBR trolley. It is just getting smaller and smaller and I am so excited. This game is finally paying off. I've been playing this for years. My TBR hasn't really been getting smaller, but 33 is so good. So at the beginning of August, I had 33 books waiting for me to read them. And the first 6 books I read, you do actually know about if you've been keeping up to date with my videos. So I've been working for a little while now on a video where I read books that were recommended to me by you, by subscribers, by a professional that I paid, by an algorithm, and books that I suggested for myself for my own 5-star predictions. And I did a little experiment to see who recommends the best books. I won't spoil the answer for you. I will link that video in the description box below. It just went up last week. It was really fun. I've been filming for that for quite a few months now. It was definitely a video that I was very slow at finishing off, but in August I did finish off the final 6 of those. I hauled The Shore by Sara Taylor and I read that. I hauled The Vegetarian by Han Kang and I read that. I also hauled The Red Word by Sarah Henstra and read that. So far, so balanced. I talked a lot about all 3 of these books in that video, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. Go over there to get my reviews. I will say that of those 3, The Red Word was my favourite. This was a 5-star read. It was really, really good. This is set in the 90s on a college campus. It's about rape culture at one of the fraternities. It's a really angry book. It's a very contradictory book. It's full of these like philosophical debates and I just absolutely loved it. I thought it was really, really powerful and it made me feel like so many emotions, and it was also a very confusing book. It leaves you with like so much to think about. So I absolutely loved this one and I talk more about that in that other video. I also really enjoyed The Shore by Sara Taylor, but you can see like some of my pros and cons of it in that video review. And finally, The Vegetarian I liked fine. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was definitely very moving and I was gripped, but I didn't feel like I totally understood it. And then some books that I had already owned before the start of August, so that's just reducing my TBR. I read Oreo by Fran and I didn't really like it in the end, so I don't have it anymore. I always give books away if I don't love them. I talk a lot more about it in that video, but it was disappointing because this one was a 5-star prediction for me and it started really, really strong, and then I felt like I just kind of lost the plot. I didn't quite understand what's happening, and it's not a criticism of the book. It definitely felt like it was me not understanding the references. So I didn't love that one. But then I read Other People's Clothes by Calla Henkel, which was really fun. This was a thriller mystery. It's set in the early 2000s. It's got this kind of theme of like Amanda Knox and Britney Spears. Those are 2 very different women, but you know, the idea of being women that the press became obsessed with and painted these really strong narratives of. And yeah, it's very twisty-turny. It's really, really fun. Really enjoyed this one. And I read Patsy by Nicole, Dennis-Benn, and this book was incredible. So everything I've been talking about so far, as I've said, I do talk more about in that other video that I will link to below. So I'm not going to repeat all of those, but I do want to spend some time in this video talking about Patsy just because this book was so good. This was a 5-star read and one of the best books that I've read this year. So this is about a woman called Patsy, who at the beginning of the book is 28 years old and she's applying for a visa to go to America. She's just applying for a visitor visa, but she knows in her head that she's not going to return. She's just going to use that visa to get into the country and then she's going to stay there undocumented. But she has a 5-year-old daughter. She lives in Jamaica, by the way. She has a 5-year-old daughter called True, who she knows she is not taking with her on this trip. And True doesn't know that. So right from the beginning, it's very sad. It's very uncomfortable. It's very easy to want to like villainize Patsy for this decision that she's making, but I really didn't. It took me a little while to warm up to her because she does it's not even the leaving her daughter behind that was upsetting me so much. It was like the lying to her, and she's very afraid of her own emotions, and so she avoids doing things that are difficult, which just hurts other people. So she's a difficult character to warm up to, but she wants to go to New York to find Cicely, the woman that she is in love with. And they used to be together, they were in love, but it had to be very secretive. Cicely is now living in New York, and Patsy thinks that if she goes to New York and leaves her life behind, she can go and have the life they were always supposed to have together in America. But of course, things don't go that way. So this book then spans like more than 10 years, going back and forth between Patsy's life in New York and True's life left behind in Jamaica. And True is also like such a sad character. She's completely scarred by this abandonment that she experienced. And she also is going on her own exploration of her identity, her sexuality, her gender identity in an environment where that's not particularly encouraged or welcomed. So she's really having to go on this journey by herself. And I completely fell in love with her as a character. Patsy I warmed up to as the book went on, and I did love her by the end, but she did just keep like making so many mistakes that you were like, Patsy, stop it. True, I just wanted to like wrap her in my arms, give her a hug the whole way through. This book was fantastic. It was absolutely heartbreaking. It also took me a while to get into the book, to be honest. Right from the beginning, I knew it was a really good book. But it was a book that I kept avoiding picking up because I just knew it was going to be so sad. I knew it was going to be so heavy. It's written, a lot of the dialogue is written in Jamaican patois, which I really loved by the end. But at first, it's just a new experience for me. So it just took me a little while to be able to read it and understand and not feel like that I was getting kind of stuck. Once I got into it, I absolutely loved it. It really brought so much more of this world to life. Kind of hearing these characters, I could hear their voices in my head. So I really loved that. But it did take me a little while to get into. Not that long, just the first sort of 60 or so pages. I kept not wanting to pick it up. And then from then on, I was absolutely hooked. And I would just recommend this book to anyone, I think. Okay, then I read a bunch of books on Blinkist, so I'll take this moment to tell you a little bit about this video sponsor. I have talked about Blinkist before. They are a platform that literally seems to have been invented for me. If you've watched my channel for a while, you will know that I often love the idea of reading non-fiction, but really struggle to get through a whole book. It just so often, this is a massive generalization, but so often reading non-fiction books can seem a little inaccessible to me. I struggle a little bit, but there's so many ideas and concepts out there that I really want to learn more about. Blinkist is a platform, so you can get the app, download it on your phone. You suddenly have access to thousands and thousands of non-fiction titles condensed into these little blinks that take you roughly 15 minutes to read, and all of the key messages are pulled out and made really clear for you. So it's just such a fantastic, easy way of learning loads of really interesting topics without having to spend like the weeks that it would take me to get through reading a full non-fiction book a lot of the time. They also have audiobooks on there. They also have podcasts or shortcasts. So they're just absolutely amazing. If you use my link in the description box below, then you get a free 7-day trial and 25% off a premium membership when you sign up through my link. So definitely do click that one to sign up for it. I've been using it for about 2 months now and I absolutely love it. So this month I'll tell you about the 4 Blinkist books that I read. I read Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism by Kristen Ghodsee. So you might remember in a video a little while ago, I did originally own that book and I actually unhauled it once I got Blinkist because I saw it was on here and I was like, I'm just going to read it on Blinkist instead. That works so much better for me. And also what's fun is that if you really, really enjoy a title on Blinkist, once you get through to the end, they do then have links for you to buy the full book. So if you want to dive kind of deeper in, you can do that. So this one is basically a really compelling argument in favour of socialism, partly because women have better sex under socialism, which is a really good reason in of itself, but it goes through, it really defines kind of starting with what socialism is, the difference between state socialism and democratic socialism, and then kind of contrasting those to what a lot of us live under currently, which is neoliberal capitalism. And the book goes through and breaks down the ways in which women's lives specifically are most disadvantaged under capitalism. In fact, everyone's lives are disadvantaged under capitalism, but statistically, women are going to suffer the most from that. So it goes through all of those arguments and then builds up to this grand finale, which is that women have been proved to be having better sexual relationships in socialist societies because they are not as dependent on men, not dependent on heterosexual relationships, they're not financially dependent on men, and therefore they have more freedom to choose the relationships that they want to be in. It's very convincing. I also read Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which was really, really interesting. I've heard so many people talking about the original of this book, so I read the Blinkist version, and it's basically about it's a brief history of mankind and also a little bit of speculation about the future of mankind. It was also very interesting reading that, having just read Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism, because it kind of provides a bit of history for how humans came to live under capitalism in the first place when it doesn't advantage us, but how easy it is to kind of accidentally fall into that because you don't see the disadvantages until it's too late. And then I read 2 self-help titles. So I read one called The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. It pulled me in because of that title, because I definitely feel like I don't have courage to be disliked. I'm very dependent on validation from other people. I then went straight on to read quite a similar one called The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts. So I was interested to read this one because Alan Watts is a philosopher, or was a philosopher, I think he's dead, that RG is obsessed with. He listens to loads and loads of YouTube videos that have audio recordings of Alan Watts. So I wanted to see what he was all about, and I really enjoyed this one. So I really liked having those little blinks, is what each page, each summary is called, a blink, that just kind of sums up what Alan Watts was trying to convey. So there you go, that was 4 whole separate book ideas that I got to read in just 15 minutes each. So like I said, use my link if you want to sign up for a free trial and then 25% off your Blinkist membership. I think it's really worth it. You get access to so much information. Next, I had a little shopping spree. I bought this book, Cassandra at the Wedding by Dorothy Baker, which is like a queer classic. It was first published in the 60s, and it's about a woman called Cassandra driving to her family home to go to the wedding of her identical twin, Judith. Cassandra is gay, brilliant, nerve-wracked, miserable, and hell-bent on making sure her sister's wedding doesn't go ahead. So there's a dark comedy about marriage, and I'm just really excited about this one. That was one from the 60s. Then I bought a much more recent book, The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I've seen quite a few people on BookTube showing this one off, and I just think it looks fab. So it's a mixed media murder mystery where you are kind of trying to solve the murder as well. So if you look at it, it's all like little emails or notes, or mostly emails. Maybe it's all emails. And then look, there's an invitation for a ball. There's a bunch of stuff in here. 1 murder, 15 suspects. Can you uncover the truth? So this looks like a modern take on cozy crime. And I don't think I've heard anything bad about this book. Everyone who's read it has just said that they loved it and found it so much fun. So I'm definitely going to read that one in September, and I hope I can solve the murder. Then I got sent a Marvellous Light from work by Freya Marske. This one is coming out in December, I believe. And I'm going to be reading this one for a read-along with work. So I host these read-alongs sometimes where I work with influencers. I have sneakily just started it a few days early, but I will mostly be reading along at the same time. This is going to be the first book in a series, and it's fantasy, so it's outside my comfort zone, but I have been enjoying the first few pages that I read. It's a queer Edwardian England romance. That is already enough to pull me in, and it is very, very pretty. And also the magic in this book works through cradling, which is kind of like Cat's Cradle. I used to be obsessed with Cat's Cradle. You know what? I'm actually going to go and buy myself a Cat's Cradle string, because I used to be able to do so many of the cool little shapes. I could do the ones where you played them as a game with other people, but there were also some you could do by yourself, make different shapes. I could make Jacob's Ladder. I could make the Eiffel Tower where you like held some of it in your teeth. I'm going to get myself a string. If you watched my 1,000 Doors readathon vlog, you know that I read these 3 books from my TBR trolley. So this is Transitions. This is an anthology of 8 short essays about the experience of being trans or non-binary. So it's from 8 new writers. They were all very, very different. I steamed through this one. It was a very quick read. I read it all in an hour on one of the live shows that we did for the readathon. I really enjoyed this one because a lot of the stories were very positive. Obviously, there are huge struggles that come from being trans in our society, because we are a horrible society where you're going to face oppression. But I really liked the positivity of this book in terms of celebrating trans identity and celebrating the trans community. It felt much more positive than the kinds of essays that often get put out there for a cisgender audience to read and feel like moved by. Having just read Detransition Baby last month and like absolutely loving it, I raved about it, and last month's Balancing the Books, that also included a lot of celebration of trans life, and so this felt like the perfect next read for me. I loved it. I read Our Souls at Night by Kent Haruf. Our Souls at Night, very funny title. Gave this one 5 stars. I loved it. It was another very quick read. It's very sweet. It's about 2 neighbours who live kind of opposite each other. They've known each other for many, many years, but never been like close friends. They've just lived in the same small towns. They know of each other. And they're both now quite lonely. Both of their spouses have died. And they come up with this idea that they are going to sleep together at night. Literally just sleep together in the same bed to have someone to talk to through the nights, which can feel really lonely, I imagine. So it's just absolutely beautiful. And then this relationship just kind of blossoms into a deeper friendship. It blossoms into a romance. And it's just gorgeous. I really, really loved the movie, which is on Netflix. And so as soon as I'd watched that, I knew I wanted to read this book. And it was just gorgeous. It is very sad. It did make me cross. You'll see in my $1,000 vlog, I did get grumpy reading this book because it doesn't cater to what you want it to do, but it was beautiful. And then I read The Beginning of the World in the Middle of the Night, which is a short story collection by Jen Campbell, and I loved these. So these are all kind of fairy tale inspired, quite dark, often queer, slightly magical stories, and they were just fantastic. I was so sucked in. The very first story is called Animals, and that one was my absolute favourite. It like started the collection on such a good note. The second I read that, I was like, oh, this is gonna get dark. This is where I want to be. But then there was a range, which I really liked. So then the second story after that was, I think it was the second one after that, was quite sad. It was quite moving. Then we had one that was very, very magical and very weird and fantastical. It was a real range, but they were all combined together with this kind of thread of fairy tales. So we have some familiar fairy tales, some reimaginings of fairy tales. It was just great. Jen is wonderful. Then I read The Christie Affair by Nina de Gramont, which was fantastic. So this is my proof copy. It's such a great designed proof. This is about the infamous 11-day disappearance of Agatha Christie. The book imagines what might have happened in those 11 days, but it's told from the perspective of Agatha Christie's husband's mistress. This book was so much more than I was expecting. You get kind of 3 books in one, and it worked so well. So you partly get the backstory of, what's her name? Nan. Nan O'Day is the Agatha Christie's husband's mistress, and you get the story of her life and her backstory, and it's actually very moving. It's very sad. You see her growing up poor in Ireland, and it just dives into some like feminist history, which I found really, really powerful. So I loved that whole backstory. You also get present day, where there are 2 mysteries going on. There's the disappearance of Agatha Christie, and then there is also this Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery. So Nan goes and stays at this hotel in Cornwall, and while she's there, somebody dies. And that whole section was told in a very Agatha Christie-esque way. It felt so cozy and familiar and old-fashioned the way that part of the story was told. So it was really clever. It's 3 very different styles of book that blend together just perfectly. It doesn't feel bitty at all. It feels like the voice just kind of seamlessly blends and blurs from one type of story to another. So you get like the domestic thriller, the cozy mystery, and the feminist historical fiction. And they just worked so well together. I absolutely loved it. And of course, all of these do come together and kind of blur into each other. So yeah, it was fab. I will say on a personal note, because I don't often love romance in books, there were some points where the romance became a bit more of a focus than I necessarily wanted it to be. But that's just a very personal thing. I think for a lot of people, they will love that. I really, really recommend this book. It's coming out in January. Pre-order it. Disclosure, I do work for the company that published it, but I'm always very honest about the books I talk about on this channel, and I loved this one. Having said that I never read non-fiction, I did read one non-fiction this month, and that was How Stella Learnt to Talk. My proof copy is personalised, so it says How Hippo Learnt to Talk, just like Stella. and I sat and read this one all in one sitting because I was hooked. And then instantly, the second I finished reading it, I went and bought all the kit. It's right here, I'm going to show you. I'm not going to press the buttons because I don't want to confuse Hippo, but each of these buttons is recorded with my voice saying different words, and we are teaching her to be able to understand them. She can't do it yet, but she does seem to be listening and paying attention. Eventually, she'll press the buttons herself and she'll be able to communicate if she wants a walk or to play or some food or to go outside. The book is really, really interesting. So it's written by this woman, Christina Hunger, who is a speech therapist, and she realised that she could use a lot of the same techniques that she uses working with children who are non-verbal and communicate through machines and like buttons that they press different words. She realised that she could use those same techniques for her dog, and she did, and it worked incredibly. So this is just such a great story, and throughout it there are little tips of kind of what you can do, how to teach your own dog. You see that little bullet points there? So I was really making note of those, but I also just loved hearing her own story. So I did devour this one in one go and gave it 5 stars. I'll dock a star if Hippo never learns to talk. Just joking. Finally, I hauled a book, Rainbow Milk by Paul Mendez. I hauled this one to read with my offline book club. This I'm really looking forward to. I've heard great things about it. I heard about it on Lauren in the Books' channel. She said that she really loved the main character in this. It's set in the early noughties. It's about a young black gay man called Jesse who moves to London for a fresh start, but finds himself at a loss for a new centre of gravity and turns to sex work to create new notions of love, fatherhood and spirituality. I've heard really great things, and I think that we will have fun chats about this one in our book club, which means that I am finishing August with a mere 29 books on my TBR trolley. I think this is the first time it's ever been under 30 books, probably ever in my life. That is such great news. At this point, I don't know how much further I even need to go. My goal was I wanted to fit the books onto just 2 shelves, and now that's happened because I've got this top shelf full of plants now. Of course, I will keep doing balancing the books because I like doing it. I like keeping track of it. But I feel like mission complete at this point. So thank you so much again to Blinkist for sponsoring this video. Once again, I will put the link in the description box below so you can click through and get a 7-day free trial and then 25% off premium membership. I'm genuinely so enjoying my adventures on Blinkist, my whole new world of non-fiction that has opened up to me. So let me know in the comments below what your favourite books are that you have read this month, and I will see you next time.